In the 70s and 80s, I used to visit family in Alveston in Derby. I was born in Derbyshire and brought up in Leicester, as my family lived in Derbyshire. 2 miles down the road in a place called Allington on May the 11th, 2012, 5 children would die in a house fire. A 6th child would die in hospital 2 days later. This is the story of the Philpotts. So Duwayne Philpott, who was the oldest at 13, was Mairead and stepson of Mick Philpott. He was described as a charming and caring ladies' man, on the verge of turning into a young man. He took it upon himself to be protector of his younger siblings. He was independent and understanding. He loved to spend time with Crackle, an African grey parrot. He enjoyed music and had a talent for the violin. He held a season ticket for his local club, Derby County. Dr. Christopher Reynolds, head teacher at St. Benedict's Catholic School, where Duwayne was a pupil, described him as modest, hard-working, and always looking to improve his skills. Jade Philpott was 10. Patricia Hearn, head teacher of St. George's Roman Catholic Primary School, said she was well regarded at school and described as very intelligent. She was a beautiful princess. She was a mother hen to her younger brothers, and she was part of the chaplaincy team at school. She had a real talent for boosting class morale, and she was everybody's friend, and her manners were impeccable. John Philpott, 9. Teachers at St. George's Primary remember him as a cheeky chappie, lively and ready to pick a fight with all the boys. He was cheerful, smiley and polite. He was also a keen Derby County supporter. He competed with his brothers when playing together, and he wanted to pursue a career as a soldier in the army. Jack Philpott was 8. The tribute read out by Canon Alan Burbridge called him a blue-eyed boy who was bashful and shy, and was the quietest of the children. He was a delight to be around, loved gaming. He loved to spend most of his time on his Nintendo DS, and he was a real computer geek. His head teacher at school said he was a pupil who was eager to learn. Jesse Philpott was 6. He was described by his teachers at St. George's Primary as a cheerful pupil. He was a loud character and very mischievous, storming off to his room like a teenager when in trouble. Jayden Philpott was 5. He was a whirlwind, nicknamed the Miracle Baby because of his premature birth. He looked up to his elder siblings. He was a bouncy and hyperactive boy who loved playing outside and was always messy. He was constantly getting into play fights with his siblings and made friends easily at school. He often ate several packets of crisps in one go. On to the father, Mick Philpott. Now, he was born in December 1956 in Derby and was one of 8 children in a Roman Catholic family. His parents were Peggy and John. In the 1940s, his family immigrated from Ireland to Manchester, but by 1956 they were in Derby. And 2 of their younger children were removed from Peggy's custody due to neglect. Unlike her son Mick, she was a diligent worker who worked at Rolls-Royce and eventually retired at the age of 70. His father wasn't around much, although he did live at home, but I believe he drank a lot. I'm not sure what he did for a job. I think he was employed, but I'm not sure doing what. Him and his siblings brought themselves up, which sort of feeds into the first 2 being taken into care. There probably was neglect there as well, although it probably wasn't picked up by Derby Social Services. Children played truant, signs of antisocial behaviour. Mick was actually considered the most reserved out of all of them. He'd rather stay in watching television, playing outside, and he favoured watching sexualised scenes and nudity. This was as a young child, so that's probably where he later developed his sex addiction, which I think you can call it. He started drinking alcohol from the age of 11, and I don't think he had much friends until then, but he managed to gain friends by stealing alcohol from the local shops and off licenses and giving them to his friends to ingratiate himself or, his peers at school. He claimed he lost his virginity at 13, which is disputed. He also left school at 15 and started having girlfriends then, had quite a few girlfriends, and they all ended up leaving him due to his controlling and violent nature. By the time he was 19, however, he met his first serious relationship, Kim Hill. Now, Kim was his girlfriend of 2 years. He began his relationship with her when she was 15 and he was 19, which starts a pattern. I mean, when you're 19, 15, still illegal, but probably not as bad as when you're in your 30s and 40s. However, Mick did in his 30s, 40s, was still going for women of that, or girls from that sort of age. And he was very violent and abusive towards her, probably more so towards her than any of his other girlfriends. In the groin with a crossbow due to her, in his eyes, wearing too short a skirt. He cracked her knee with a hammer. He broke her fingers, and this all culminated when she basically had enough. He was in the army, and this is 2 years on, when he was 21. In the army, she sent him a Dear John letter, and he returned to her house in Spondon, which is another place I was familiar with when I was at his natives. It was about 1978 or 77? 78, in July 78, age 21, he attempted to murder her and her mother. So he basically broke into her house, and I think while she was in bed, he started stabbing her 26 times. And her mother intervened, who was a nurse, and he stabbed her 11. And I'll just go through the areas that he stabbed her in. So the knife penetrated both lungs, liver, and she eventually got liver cancer as a result, bladder, and one kidney. He later told a friend he was attempting to damage all her major organs, and when the ambulance arrived, he basically said, "Oh, don't bother, she's dead." And she did die, but they'd managed to bring her back to life. He got JBH with intent against her mother and was convicted of attempted murder of Kim. And he was sentenced to 7 years in prison in December 1978. Now, I don't know whether he'd get longer now, but I would certainly hope so. And he actually only served 3 years and 2 months, which is nothing when you consider the egregiousness of what he actually did to her. Obviously shows us a bit of a psychotic side to him. So after he served his time in prison, he ended up marrying a lady called Pamela Lomax in 1986. I'm not sure how old she was, but he had 3 children with her, 2 sons and a daughter, and she said that he was controlling, and she prayed he was moved on to someone else. He was cheating on her all the time, but didn't like her cheating on him, or, so one rule for him, one rule for his girlfriends. He did meet someone else called Heather Kehoe, 14, and he met her in Rainworth in Nottinghamshire. He was 37 at that time, so, quite a big age gap. On her 16th birthday, she ran away from her parents to move in with Mick. She gave birth to 2 children, both boys, in quick succession. However, he beat Kehoe when she had the second baby because he wanted a daughter, not realising that actually it's the male sperm that determines the sex of the child, so it was his fault anyway, but hey-ho. She described him as teaching his older sons to be violent towards her, and she did not conceive again, so not clear. It sort of implies maybe she didn't conceive because of the beatings he was getting from her. But anyway, she didn't conceive again after those 2 children. And then in 2000, he met Mairead Duffy, who was the daughter of Irish travellers. She was a single mother. She was 19. She left a previous volatile relationship where the man she was seeing and she had a child with forcibly shaved her head. So she had long blonde hair and he just shaved it off, probably because he just thought she looked too attractive or something. I don't know. Anyway, she moved on to Mick, who was probably, at the time she saw as her knight in shining armour, little did she know. And on the 23rd of December 2002, Heather gained legal custody of her children. Mairead moved in shortly after, and the couple married in May 2003. In 2010, police cautioned Mick for slapping and dragging Mairead into the street by her hair, so I'm assuming that the neighbours contacted the police because it was in the street. And they also began to participate in dogging 2011. Now, for people outside of the UK might not know what dogging is. Basically, it's you meet up in parks, fields, car parks, at night, and it's groups of people basically just voyeuristic, watching each other having sex, and I think swapping partners probably as well, because I know Mairead got pregnant having sex with somebody else while Mick watched, and he made her have an abortion. There was a BBC documentary where they talked to more of Mairead's family and Mick's family and friends, and one of her friends said that Mairead asked her friend to have sex with Mick, and the love shack was a caravan attached to the house. So Mairead, and haven't moved on to her yet, but there was a lady that he met after Mairead called Lisa, who in turns to sleep with Mick. So one night Mairead was to sleep with him, have sex with him. Next night Lisa would. Anyway, in this caravan one day, I assume she probably did it on more than one occasion, but there's only one person who said this. She approached a friend to have sex with Mick, and this friend refused, and Mairead was like, well, it's okay, I don't mind, you can do it. And she's like, no thanks, and made her excuses and left. In 2001, he met Lisa Willis, who was 16 and a single parent and also an orphan. And he invited Willis to move into his council house in 2002, and she served as a bridesmaid at his wedding to Mairead in 2001. And she was pregnant by Mick at this time also. She walked out on 2012 using the reason that she was taking her 5 children to go swimming, her 5 children by Mick. And that was the last he saw of her. So Paul was involved with a sexual relationship with Mairead and Mick, and he had young children of his own, was friends with Philpott, and was convicted of robbery as a teenager. And another thing I didn't mention about Mick, which I meant to, was that he loved publicity. He had I think, a 3-bedroom council house, and had, at the time, 11 children living there. And he thought he was entitled to a bigger one, even though he was living on benefits and hadn't worked since 2004. Also, his 2 women, Mairead and Lisa, they both worked, gave him the money that they earned, their hard-earned cash, and he basically managed it. He put it into his bank account, managed all the bills. He was sort of a house husband. He used to take the kids to school. Apparently, everybody said the kids looked after. He contacted the press because he wanted a bigger house, and he thought he could shame Derby County Council to giving him a bigger house. As a result of that, he ended up on television on things like This Morning in the UK, Jeremy Kyle, which is a bit like Jerry Springer's show, and he did a documentary with Anne Widdecombe, where she tried to get him a job and failed miserably, and got him on film calling her a bitch, and basically called all women bitches. And he was showing off about his love nest and the fact that he slept with one woman one night and one woman the other night, and he introduced these 2 women as his wives, and she was like, that's not legal in this country. Well, technically one of them I'm married to, but I call them both my wives. I favoured Lisa. So he actually asked Mairead if he could divorce her, and he asked her 4 times, and all 4 times she refused. So he never got his wish. And then Lisa left him, and as a result, he attempted suicide, and he was really upset, according to his son, by Heather, called Michael, who actually lived with them for a time but wasn't there the night of the fire. He was distraught, he was in tears when Lisa left. He also didn't think Mick was responsible for the fire, but he obviously was. But obviously, as his son, he probably didn't want to believe it. And Mairead, the following week, also, after Mick committed suicide or attempted to commit suicide, Mairead tried, and her reasoning was, if she was dead, then Lisa would come back and Mick and her would live happily ever after. But obviously, that wasn't to be. Anyway, so after all that transpired, in an act of revenge, Mick started putting it about round the local neighbourhood that he was being threatened by Lisa. She was threatening to set the house on fire, and also took out a custody hearing with Lisa. He was going to try and get custody of the children. So contacted the police about Lisa, saying she was threatening and harassing him. And he wrote to his wife Mairead and his friend Paul Mosley to help. They rehearsed it, according to Paul Mosley, up to 6 weeks, what they were planning on doing. And in the early morning of the custody case, petrol was poured through the letterbox, And then after setting light to the house, Mick, Mairead and Paul entered the garden. They put a ladder by the bedroom window of the children. I think Paul was supposed to climb the ladder to rescue them. However, the fire took hold a lot quicker than they expected. They'd used too much petrol, decorated the stairwell using yacht paint, which was highly flammable and wasn't to be used in houses anyway. And basically the stairwell acted as a chimney, and all this poisonous smoke just went up and suffocated the children. Neighbours tried to help, famously the Butler brothers, who, well, they've been on a few documentaries in tears talking about their attempts to try and save the children, but they got as far as the smoke. I said it was like inhaling exhaust fume. It was just, he couldn't go past the smoke. It was just so, he couldn't breathe. Managed to get there. The Mick and Mairead called the ambulance as soon as they knew what was happening, and you could hear them panicked on the phone. You can listen to the recordings. They apparently, the ambulance arrived within 4 minutes, got all the kids out, but 5 of them they tried to resuscitate. They couldn't. They were all dead. Duwayne was still alive but died 2 days later in hospital. And according to Mairead's family, again on this BBC documentary, they were talking about it. Mick and Mairead didn't seem bothered at all. They were all sitting, the sisters and Mick and Mairead's family were all by Duwayne's bedside. Mairead and Mick were nowhere to be seen. They were more worried about complaining about the fact that although the hospital had put them up in a room near Duwayne's ward, they were showing no interest in going to see him. They were just complaining about the fact that the hospital weren't providing them with food, and they were ordering Chinese. And also around about the same time, I think it might have been after Duwayne died, they were seen round the neighbourhood, their local neighbourhood, sort of drinking, wearing Stetsons, singing karaoke, to the point where people were feeling uncomfortable and asked them to leave the venue where this karaoke was taking place, and actually contacted the police about it because they were concerned about their behaviour. The police initially, because Mick tried to blame Lisa, arrested Lisa and her brother-in-law. However, they released them quite quickly when they realised there was no, probably had an alibi and there was no evidence to link them to the fire. After that, Mick tried to blame his next-door neighbours. They arrested them, and again, they were totally innocent, so they let them go quite quickly. And because of Mick and Mairead's behaviour, they also called a press conference, and there's quite a lot of footage of this online as well, where Mick is just thanking everybody and not really mentioning his kids. Mairead is got this sort of strange look on her face, like she's upset, but it's not genuine. There's a faking special where a body language expert says there's a point where she does look genuinely upset, where she's got this sort of like grief muscle just for like a few seconds, but other than that, she's acting as much as he is. And so the police bugged them. They put them up at the Premier Inn because they didn't have a house anymore anyway. They had them talking about it. Are we going to stick to the story? Paul Mosley came round, and he was trying to talk about the fire, but Mick sort of, as a way of trying to pacify him and get him to sort of like stay on side, got Mairead to give him a blowjob. And after that, obviously he left, and Mick's heard sort of saying, "Oh, thanks, I'm so proud of you, Mairead. I know you didn't want to do it, so I'm really proud of you." Oh, it makes me feel sick just thinking about it. I imagine having to listen to that as well. They arrested Mick, Mairead and Paul on suspicion. Don't know if they originally arrested them on suspicion of murder, but police felt it was more manslaughter really, because they didn't believe that they intended the children to die. Commenced at Nottingham Crown Court on the 12th of February 2013. It was an 8-week trial, and on the 2nd of April 2013, Mick, Mairead and Paul were found guilty of manslaughter. Philpott was given a life sentence with a minimum term of 15 years. Psychologist Glenn Wilson described him as clinically a psychopath and exhibitionist with antisocial personality disorder. During the trial, Mairead used as a defence that her father had sexually abused her and she had been raped. BBC documentary, her family, including her father and her sisters, said that never happened, the rape or the sexual abuse by the father. And what actually happened when it came to the rape was one of her sisters was on holiday with her, and apparently she had sex with a married man for money, and when she was caught in the act, she said she'd been raped. Mosley enjoyed attention gained from his proximity to the fire. He boasted of being arrested and was bailed for 6 counts of murder. Sorry, he boasted of being arrested and bailed for 6 counts of murder. He could not help telling people that this was a plan that had gone wrong. And he planned to hand himself in, as it wasn't fair that Mick was taking all the blame. What would you say? And also was saying, what would you say if I told you we rehearsed it all 6 weeks earlier? As a result, he lost all contact with his own children, and his former partner wanted nothing to do with him. So the judge, in her sentencing remarks to Mairead, said that she put her husband above her children, and as a result, they have died. She did also use the point that Mairead, although she was a victim of coercive control to a certain extent. Come on then, stay in here. Come on, you're going to stay in, stay in. Come on. Come on. I'm not following you. Stay, come on, here. I'm going to close the door. Come on, good girl. So, Mairead. So Mairead was quite capable of saying no to Mick Philpott when he wanted to divorce her 4 times, but wasn't capable of saying no to him when it came to her children. So she basically put her love, for want of a better word, of Mick above the care of her children. And following a parole hearing, he was originally released in May 2021, then returned to prison after breaching parole, but then said they approved the release of him following an oral hearing. We'll see when he was released, but as of November 2023, they said he was to be released, so I think it was shortly after that. So he's free now, but Mick is still... Well, he had a life term with a minimum of 17 years, I believe, whereas Paul and Mairead just has 17 years total. In this country, you have 17 years, you're normally let out in half the time with good behaviour. So that's the end of that tale. Grim, awful about the children being killed at the hands of their parents, whether it was deliberately or not. It was very foolhardy plan, very stupid plan. I hope you found that educational and informative, and if you've got any comments, please put them below. And I've been Anne-Marie, and I hope you enjoy my content, and if you do, please like and subscribe. Thank you. Bye bye.